December 4th. And then all of a sudden they said my blood pressure read 238 over 124. And they
Oh,
said, go to the ER now. And
Mm.
so I ended up
wow.
staying 5 days in there.
Oh, wow.
They got it under control.
For the most part, yeah. Well, yes, it's under control now.
Well, I'm glad you're out. That's scary stuff there.
Let me tell you
Yes.
something. Modern medicine has come a long way because they got some stuff out. And she told me, she said, we got something that will get your blood pressure down for sure. I said, you do? And they got it down to 106 over 59. It's oh, we got to cut back on this just to get it back up. Yeah, yeah.
But we're so
So
glad to have you with us, Ray, and
thank you.
agree with you about modern medicine. All right, so everybody, welcome. This is a regular meeting of the West Virginia Democratic Party Rules and Bylaws Committee. It is 6:40, and we're calling this meeting to order. I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully you see the agenda, the draft agenda that was sent out. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, who moved and seconded? My head was down.
Judy Stevens moved it.
Bob Baker seconded it.
Thank you, guys.
I don't know where I moved it to, but
All right, any discussion? Okay, all in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Okay, our agenda is adopted. All right. Actually, you know what I did? I forgot to do roll call, so I apologize. Let me go to roll call. All right. Robert Baker,
Present.
Dottie Berger,
Present.
Matt Halterman. I think he is absent. Hopefully he'll join us in a little bit. Deb McCarthy.
Present.
Maria Russo.
Present.
Judy Stevens.
present.
Selena Vickers present. Ray Whiting.
Present.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. And we've already done the approval agenda. Now we're going to go to approval of the minutes of the last meeting. These were also sent out ahead of time. Is there any questions or changes or a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't this the meeting that I couldn't come to?
Well, that's a good question. Were you at the last meeting where we were talking about party flipping?
No. I
Okay.
remember my husband was he was in the
That's right.
hospital.
That's right. Okay, let me take
Yeah,
this off.
Judy, I have a question mark on your name, which means I don't know how it got to the members present.
Yeah, my husband was in the hospital, so I couldn't make that meeting.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's wanting to make sure and clarify that.
Okay.
I don't like to miss, but I'm not going to take credit if I wasn't there.
All right. Okay. Any other corrections to the minutes? Okay. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as corrected?
So moved.
Second.
Hold on just a second. Okay, all in favor of adopting the minutes as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. The minutes of the last meeting are adopted. Awesome. All right, so we're back to our agenda. And so there are two items of business for us to discuss tonight. I'm going to stop sharing for a few minutes. So one of the things that we have we identified early on is the idea of having of considering having councils. And so a council would be similar to a caucus in some ways, but in other ways not. Caucuses are completely separate in terms of they're part of historically underrepresented groups and that sort of thing. And so they're part of the affirmative action, and they have certain, rights and that sort of thing. A council would, in some ways, have some of the same rights, but they would be like. They would be something like an issue-oriented group and a method for us to organize. So in some states, the state party has a labor council or a poverty council or a environmental council, a progressive council, things like that. And they, regular Democrats can join and be a part of that. But there would be, if we wanted to have something like that, we'd have to have a method. How would these form, and what would their rights be, and what does it take? And so I've sort of talked or looked at a few other states and the DNC's rules and look like that sort of thing, just to get like some sense of that. But let me just generally, let's open this up right now just for some discussion of, do we think developing a path for councils to develop, is that something that we think would be useful? We want to look at doing that. Let's start with that. Yes, go ahead, Deb.
So any way that we can get more people to engage with our process is great. And if councils achieve that, let people outside of, and are you saying that people outside the West Virginia Democratic Committee can join these councils?
Well, if we decide it, I mean, that's what I'm not a member of the DNC, but I am a member of the DNC's rural council. Like, I can join that, and I can vote in that council. Now, they have rules that say I can't be the chair. You have to be a member of the DNC to be the chair of it. But I can be like on their calls and go to their meetings and vote and things like that.
I think it's an excellent idea. More people welcomed in, more people participating, giving opinions, and who knows whose expertise is out there that we don't have ourselves. I mean, this just opens up a whole world for us. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
It also opens up the opportunity for younger people to get involved, to try to pull them in.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I stepped on somebody.
No, you didn't.
I was going to ask, I don't see any, but is there a downside to this?
I don't see a downside to it. I'm like Deb. I think any opportunity we have to open up the party and let people participate is good. As with any good thing, there's always somebody out there who can figure out a way to screw it up, and that sort of thing. So I think that the devil is in the details in how we design it. But I think there's personally, I think there's a lot of positive to it. Judy?
And this would be confined strictly to registered Democrats, correct?
That's what we would have to decide, but my inclination would be yes.
Yeah, I think that would be wise.
Yes, I think
Might get spies in. You can't trust a lot of people anymore.
All right. Okay. So anybody have a different opinion that anybody believe that we shouldn't look in this direction? Okay. All right. So let's kind of look at that. So we could do a couple different things. We could sort of name a few things that issues that we think are sort of like traditional ones that they have. But the downside to do, and those things would be like a labor council, environmental council, progressive council, poverty council, the things that I mentioned. But the downside of that is I think that it somewhat stifles creativity. And if we open it up, if we defined how you could become a council, then I think that it would provide more creativity for people who they read it and go, oh, I'd like to try to develop a council on, I don't know, small business council or
Education.
yes, yeah. So people, and I'm afraid if you list, for example, A, B, and C, then people's mind will be limited to A, B, and C. But so we could do it either way and begin, and talking about, well, what, you don't want it to be super easy for people to do. You want them, the whole idea is we want them to organize and to have a certain group or whatever. So we could start talking about, what would it take to petition the state executive committee to have it, how many people, from how many counties, we could do things like that. For instance, well, okay, those are the two things that I want to mention. Like we could say that they had to have a certain number of members, basically to sign up, to agree with like an overall thing. This is what this council is about. This is what we want to do, and have a certain number of people that represent a certain number of counties, and have, I don't know, a certain number of state executive committee members that signed off on it, that kind of like as a sponsor or something like that. So what do you guys think about that? If we started to try to piece together what would be a reasonable threshold for beginning a council?
You're talking about making it like by just area of the state, or it can.
Well, I think it would be a statewide organization, a statewide council. But I think that it should not be just like Kanawha County Central or something like that,
Yeah.
That it have to have membership from not every county. That would be ridiculous, but
a fair representation.
Yeah. So to show that it is a statewide organization. Yeah.
I'd say 5 is a good starting number.
5.
That's the number I think of when you're starting, and then presumably others would join.
Yeah, and you can always add.
Are you talking about 5 counties? Is that what you're saying?
No,
No, 5 people.
Oh gosh. I was
That's
thinking,
smallish.
huh? Yeah, I was thinking that was small.
What did you have in mind?
Well, I initially thought 100, and I thought that's really hard. And then I thought 50. That
It'd be like herding
represented
cats.
50 people, maybe like representing 10 counties or something like that.
I think that's a lot to start with. I mean, eventually, presumably, it would grow to counties, but you run the risk of stifling. I think if you force them to think large before they can.
Yeah, because you're going to have too many people trying to put forth their ideas, and of course, it would weed out a lot of people that really wouldn't fit. But I was, thinking more along the line of 10 or 15. But
I was thinking 10 people, 3 counties, 10 people, 5 counties, something manageable, because not everybody around the state, many people around the state, it's that might be hard. 100 people is almost impossible, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Be challenging. I think maybe 20 people, but even that's a lot of people to herd into one.
Yeah, the idea is to make it grow, and not
Right.
to stifle it at birth. So I think 10 to 15.
And would we want them to then show growth? What I don't want to happen is for somebody to say, okay, I can get 15 people and then we don't have to do any more, and like now we have this, that, you know what I mean? Like, I think we have to,
I think
think
it should be open to statewide membership, like, or not statewide membership, but like statewide membership for Democrats or something, because I feel like if it's just 10 people and it could become very exclusive of like, oh, well, this is this group and we're organizing around this. And unless they like, if they don't have to let other folks join, I could see it getting very like kind of cliquey on certain topics, but I think we should write it into the rules or framework so that it's kind of open and accessible to anybody who wants to join. So maybe somebody who has expertise is great. Maybe somebody who wants to learn more about what Democrats want to do around education could also join and become a part of it. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree that, and I think that it would be open to anybody that is a registered Democrat. I sort of thought that was a given. I apologize for not saying that. All right, so certain number of Democrats were thinking, I heard 15 to 20. So I'm gonna write 15 to 20. These are just my personal notes to start. And then can we have something in there to like show growth over time?
Yeah, or like their agenda, something that shows that, well, this is, what we're going to try to do. Just,
Oh,
give
yeah.
us an idea of what their thought process is
Okay.
after
Deb,
their first meeting.
Deb, I don't know if your hand is up, new, or okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So, would these councils be giving recommendations to the West Virginia Democratic Party? What is their purpose for existing?
Okay. And I think that we have to decide that. So I think I'll tell you my personal thought, and then we can, I think every one of these organizations, the caucuses and the councils, the county committees, every part of the organization, our job is to register people, I'm not saying that they have to register as Democrats, but independent, I can live with that. But to get them to vote Democrat, like that's our be all end all of what each of our organizations need to be doing. And so the councils that are focused on a specific thing, let's just say labor, their job would be to organize people around labor issues and to get them, to focus, get out the vote on that. They can endorse people. I think that we'll have to have some discussion about incumbents and stuff like that. That gets tricky. But I think that we have to have a narrow framework of what people do, give them the tools to do the work. But basically their job is going to be to organize around that issue. Bob, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just it seems to me that one of the big concerns we have to figure out is what role the councils would have in the executive committee, whether they would have representation on the executive committee or just be reporting to the executive committee, or what. I think once that's decided, if they have some significant role on the executive committee, then it'll be easier to create councils and make them grow, probably. On the other hand, do we want to do that? How do we want to deal with how they relate to the executive committee?
Would they be tied or tethered in some fashion to the caucuses?
No,
think
not
they
necessarily,
separate.
because the caucuses they have their own role in terms of on the affirmative action committee and certain rights to have representation of at-large members and things like that. So they would not be tied into the caucuses, although some of the rules, might be the same.
Yeah, I guess the question I was raising is if the chair of the council would have an ex officio membership like the Women's Federation has and the Young Democrats have. Their chair is an ex officio member of the executive committee, which means that they hold that seat by virtue of their office, not by election.
Well, if we do that, then it kind of makes sense to me that the threshold for a council would be to create one would be very high, because otherwise, let's say that we take the lower number of what we just threw out, 15 people. You get 15 people for an issue to sign on. You elect a chairperson, and then you have a vote on the state executive committee when basically your constituency is 15 people. Whereas, let's say Deb McCarthy, won her seat by getting votes from thousands of people, you know what I mean? And representing. So that would be, I think that would be undemocratic. If that would have to be, I think that would make it harder to get that many, to get a large constituency, to make the members like, Deb and Marie and Judy, who were, voted on their state executive, from their state Senate district, because in some ways it would really diminish their vote. You know what I mean? So I think we'd have to figure that out. Now, what we could do, and what the DNC does, I believe, I'm not 100% positive about this, but I'm like 99% positive that the DNC, the only way they have councils, but to be the chair of the council, you have to be a member of the DNC. So in other words, they would have representation, but you're not adding a person. It's somebody who already has. So Deb she could represent her Senate district, but she could also be the chair of the environmental council. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So you're
that's a good idea.
You're not diluting her, the votes of other people in any way.
So make it a requirement that the chair of the council be a member of the EC.
That makes more sense than requiring like a 500 membership or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Then,
but
I think
but
so.
then the members of the executive committee get voted on and voted off the executive committee. And what happens to the council then?
well, it would be a 4-year term, like wouldn't it?
Well, no, but if I would just say if Deb was the chair of the environmental council and she resigned her seat or something happened, let's just say she resigned her seat on the state executive committee, then the environmental council would then not have a chair at that point, and they would have to elect a new person, and that person would have to be a member of the state executive committee. Or hopefully they would have a co-chair that was all, maybe, or a vice chair who already was, maybe. I don't know. These are good questions that we'd have to figure out.
Rather than try to issue a link between the members of the executive committee and the councils, it seems to me what we want the councils to do is to be not an addition, but sort of an what's the word I want? Addendum. That's not the right word. So perhaps the connection between the executive committee and the council should be that, let's say, once every 6 months or whatever, the chair of the council gives a report to the executive committee on what the council's been doing. And that way the executive committee is apprised of what the council is doing, and says, yes, God bless you, go and keep doing that, or whatever.
So, and that they do a report, but not have a ex officio vote is what you're suggesting, Dottie.
That is what I'm suggesting, yeah.
Deb, you have your hand up?
So what if the council had to earn a seat on the DEC? What if we said, your chair doesn't have to necessarily be a member of the DEC, but if you have 500 members, you are awarded a seat on the DEC as a carrot on a stick to expand their membership.
I thought membership on the DEC, you had to be elected to it unless you were part of a, like the women's club or something like that.
Well,
Make
I
it
think
like that.
I think what she's saying is that there would be two paths. Maybe one path would be if your council person is a member of the state executive committee, well, you got to vote. You sort of have a vote, but you don't have an extra member. But if you want a member, then the other path is a high bar of members, registered members, that if you get 500 members, then at that point you would have you could have your own ex officio member on the state executive committee. I think that's what she's suggesting.
Which would require a change in the bylaws, would it not?
Well, we could build this into the bylaws if we,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking.
We could build up those two paths. I think the problem would be the monitoring of it, monitoring the membership, and they'd have to turn it in. I mean, and honestly, we should probably do that for these organizations anyway. We ask all of our county committees to send in a roster and copy of their bylaws. It makes sense that the state party would have all that anyway. So, and a way to do outreach. So I think that is reasonable to ask for their membership and updated rule whenever they pass rules or bylaws or whatever, that they send in a copy. And I think those are reasonable things to ask.
We would need to come up with a set of operating procedures for them, or
at least the parameters, I think. Like, what you can do and what, well, when you have bylaws, you're only allowed to do what your bylaws say that you can do. You can't, if your bylaws say you can do A, B, and C, and you want to do D, well, you can't do, you're not supposed to do D unless if the bylaws don't say that. So yeah, you're supposed to stick within the parameters of your bylaws. So we would definitely want to build in the parameters of, what we would want the council's function to be. And the rights, like I think if we have councils, I think they should be able to register as an unaffiliated PAC. They should be able to raise money and spend money. Let's say that they wanted to have an annual picnic for, the environmental council. They should be able to, organize that and pay for that, raise money and pay for that. If they had wanted to endorse, let's just say Evan Hansen, and they wanted to help him get elected, they should be able to do that. So, we can build in the parameters of what we want them to be able to do, assuming that if we don't specify what those things are, then anything else after that would not be allowed.
So what do you think is the best way to proceed as far as generating something that we can look at it and say, yeah, that's what we want, or no, we need to make some changes?
Well, why don't we take the discussion that we had here and um, Bob, would you be willing to take a stab at pinning kind of like what that would look like in terms of bylaws? And I do somewhere have a copy of the DNC rules related to councils. I can send you that if you want to look at that. Would you be willing to take a stab at that?
Sure.
Okay.
I would, unless somebody, I don't want to steal opportunities from other people. I was thinking I'd be interested in working on the rules and of the Board of Appeals too. So um, I'd be delighted if somebody else would help start the councils thing instead of me.
A little bit outside of my realm.
Well, I have some notes that I have, and based on this, and we can come back to this and start forming that up.
Okay.
Okay. Any other thoughts on councils before we move on? Okay.
I'm sorry, where did we leave this? Is Bob going to do this, or has he bowed
No,
out?
I think we left it at Selena's going to take her notes and see if she can do something with it.
Oh,
Although I'm not going to make a hard promise.
If you want to send what they have at the DNC to me, I'd be happy to look at them and
Okay. All right.
things are getting busy for me for the next couple of weeks here, pretty quick.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next part of our agenda. So at the meeting the other night, we were asked by, or that basically somebody made a motion about the Board of Appeals. There have been a few, let's see, two, maybe, I think two meetings of the Board of Appeals since we have our state executive committee has been, in. And those have been public meetings. They've been on YouTube, and there have been kind of like motions and resolutions or outcomes that have been said. But it's my understanding that and I know for a fact the one that I was involved with, I did not get like a written follow-up. And that, as far as I know, that is not required because it was videoed and recorded. But there's certainly an upside to having a written record. And so a member of the state executive committee made a motion for that. That motion was not seconded, but Mike referred that to us to develop basically I had a conversation with him to develop rules of procedure for the Board of Appeals, which I'm very glad to have the opportunity for us to do that, because the written rules that they do have were from the previous administration, and in my opinion, in some ways were not fair. Now, I think that the Board of Appeals that we've had, the meetings have been fair, and the chairs have given plenty of opportunity for people to talk and that sort of thing. But like for instance, the current rules like don't allow for witnesses. Well, how are you going to get to the bottom of an issue without witnesses? You know what I mean? And so, anyway, I think it's a good. I love that we have the opportunity to do this, and we have an opportunity to just make very fair rules that we can propose to the Board of Appeals. It will be up to them to accept them, but I like that we have the opportunity to do that. So
let me just say this. I've looked over both the current Board of Appeals rules that you sent out and also the ones from the state or from the National Rules and Bylaws Committee for reviewing Alabama challenges. And I think that the state rules are totally insufficient as they presently are written. I mean, they don't even talk about issuing decisions or how much time there is to do this or that. I think the DNC rules and Bylaws Committee rules are maybe a little overly legalistic. And that somewhere in the middle, leaning more towards the DNC rules would be something that we want. We want to specify what needs to happen and what the time frame is for each happening, and then how soon a decision comes out and how much time somebody has to appeal. The current rules don't even say how much time somebody has to appeal a decision to the full executive committee. So, theoretically, they could do it a year or two later.
I thought am I mistaken in thinking that in the bylaws, it gives 30 days?
There may be something in the bylaws. I'd have to go back and look at ours.
Not on the appeal, that you have to file within 30 days of the initial thing, but then after the Board of Appeals rules, there's not a time limit for how long you can appeal to the full state executive committee. And I think that's what Judy's referring to.
Right. There's no actual requirement for a written decision.
There should be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things that need improving on the state one, and the national one is a little bit complex, but maybe not too complex. I don't know if you have a copy of that in a Word document or in a Google Doc.
I can turn that one in. I can easily turn that one into a Google Doc.
Okay. Can you turn it into a Word document?
Yes.
That would be easiest for me to work on.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that. Well, and I'm glad that you're saying that, because I'm pretty sure you're the only lawyer on this group. And
I'm pretty sure I am. The close second, I guess, is Mac, who's a parliamentarian.
All right. Well, do you want, okay, so let me see what time it is right now. It's 7:17. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at these documents, or would you like me to look at one right now?
Look at what?
Well, I was thinking about looking at the DNC document, the one for Alabama.
Let me just ask this: the grievance you went through, or the appeal you went through, was it noticed to anybody that it was going to be public? I didn't hear anything about it, but I might have missed something.
The one that, yes, it was posted on the
Website?
calendar of events. It was posted there. And this is a question. This is a member brought this up the other day, that they didn't know about these. Is now, just so you know, the DNC does not, if they have a challenge, now they'll announce it in their committee meetings, and if they get to a ruling, they'll present to the full DNC. But when there is on the front end of it, they do not make an announcement to DNC members. I think they should. Like, I think that members have a right to know that there is a challenge and what the challenge is. So I have no issue with that whatsoever. But there are not rules about that. So that might be, yes, it's on the calendar, the event page. I think that there's one on there now for a challenge that's going to be heard in January. But I don't think that there's a rule that as far as I'm aware, there's not a rule anywhere that says that the state executive committee receive an independent email or notification of a challenge or a grievance.
That'd be easy to do. They don't have to. They could put whatever's on the website. They wouldn't need to put that in the email, but just to say that the information's on the website would be enough. It could be a short email from Ryan or Mike.
All right, well, let me share the screen to show you these are the rules or procedure for that Bob is kind of referring to. This says Alabama, but to be fair, as you read through here, these rules of procedure are identified specifically for one specific challenge that's going on in Alabama right now. However, the process is very similar to all the other challenges and grievances that I've been involved with or been aware of with the DNC in terms of the hearing officer and the days and what they allow the chair to do and things like that. But most of these are heard through the credentials committee or one of the convention committees. The Rules and Bylaws Committee themselves don't necessarily have, as far as I'm concerned or aware, have never had hearings. But because this is about rules and bylaws, the DNC gave this issue specifically to the Rules and Bylaws Committee. So that's the reason but this is just a much easier document to look at than the other documents that have all this stuff in here, but the basic information is the same. So it basically defines, the parties. It talks about how documents are to be handled, the filing of a challenge or a response. So a challenge or a grievance would be, the grievant, the person who is unhappy with something, files a grievance or a challenge against somebody or like a county organization or the state or something like that, and then they have to serve it. Then the person or the organization on that end of it is the respondent, and then they are required to then give a written response within a certain time. There's no requirement, I don't think, in the rules right now that happens. It does happen, but there's no requirement for it or a timing for it. These rules have, talk about time. I mean, they have like times in here, but it also says that the co-chairs have authority to enlarge or shorten any period of time, and they do that based on whatever works for them. But it gives them the authority to do that. And then it talks about, they call them challenges, we call them grievances, but it talks about, what has to be included in it. And what I really like about this is it, has, a plain, concise, specific statement of each alleged violation of the charter or bylaws or governing authority. How a plain, concise, and specific statement of how each person or party has been injured. So it's very, very clear about what to include. And I think that helps with just vague allegations against people. So I think that it's very good to have that in there. It also asks for documents that need to be included, like witnesses, which I think people should be able to call witnesses. And then the answer or the response, it says how, a timeline for respondent to then answer and to require them to answer each specific allegation. It gives, obviously the opportunity for the co-chairs to dismiss any part of the challenge based on, certain things. The co-chair can, they have two co-chairs. The co-chairs can dismiss a challenge if they feel that it doesn't, the person doesn't have standing to bring it forth, or doesn't state a valid challenge, or is frivolous or something like that. So it doesn't have to go to a full hearing, and all these people's time is involved if certain conditions are met. And then it has their decision. They allow for, not require, pre-hearing conferences and a hearing. They have, and I think we probably couldn't do this with a hearing officer, but they hire sometimes, not all the time, hire a specialist to do as a hearing officer, a complete independent person. I don't know that we have the money to do that, but I do like the idea of having a real hearing. It talks about briefs, how much time people have to argue, where the burden of proof is, how the voting will happen, and that sort of thing. So this is the thing that Bob was talking about that is better than what we currently have, but it's probably a little bit overkill, and that we can work with that. But this is completely up to us, however we want to do this. I don't care, as long as it is a fair process for everybody, a fair and reasonable process.
So if you can send me a Word document with that with the DNC one, I can use that as a starting point.
Okay.
And
I'll do that when we end this. I'll turn that into a document and send that to you, Bob.
okay.
So are there any particular things we want to make sure that Bob incorporates into his draft for our consideration?
Let me just say the couple things that I'd already put in here was something clear about notice of the hearing, and something clear about when a decision should be made and how it should be sent out and what the time is for appeal. But there's probably other things that could be in, and if anybody thinks of anything, email me. I think you all have my email, so maybe.
I think that there definitely should be a reasonable amount of time to present a case for each side, and should be able to call witnesses. And I don't like the idea of just saying 30 minutes, period, because if you have one witness, well, that 30 minutes might be plenty of time to present your case. But if you have 5 witnesses, that might be a little hard. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be necessary that people are informed of the ruling too.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right. Well, we look forward to that. Bob, thank you so much for taking that on. All right. So I think we're done with our agenda, unless anybody else has anything else they wanted to bring up tonight.
I have a question. One of my local DEC, well, it's a man and wife. Wanted to know if there's anything in the bylaws about ADA compliance, if it applies to the state, because they're having some ADA issues up here. Her husband had polio and he's confined to a wheelchair.
Yeah, I got this question the other day, and it's probably related to that, Judy. This is my understanding. I could be wrong on this, but I don't think I am. But political parties are kind of like private organizations, so they're not held to the same, like when you go into a federal courthouse, they have to be ADA compliant, right? But we're a private organization, so we're not required under the law to be. However, the Democratic Party nationally and state, we have our own requirements about, at least we can't discriminate based on disability. And the 6 basic elements that we put in, let's see if I can, we added this when we did our first bylaw group, we added the 6 basic elements. And one of those elements, let me share the screen. One of those elements talk about that. Yeah, right here, element number 3, time and place for all public meetings at all levels. So that means, on the county level, on the state level, on, recognized organizations, caucuses, blah, 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 shall be publicized in such a manner as to be fully assure timely notice to all interested persons. And then it says such meetings must be held in places accessible to all party members and large enough to accommodate all interested persons. So go ahead.
Has this been voted on already?
Yes, this is in our bylaws now.
Okay, I wanted to make sure because I wanted to be able to give them a response.
Let me stop my share. So we don't have the ADA necessarily compliance, but we do have things that I think, like if this person tried to go to a meeting and they couldn't go up steps and it's on the 2nd floor without an elevator or a ramp, you know what I mean? Like that would be like an example of an issue. Like we could very easily bring forth a grievance on that, or try to work with them to for compliance.
Access to bathrooms was one of the issues that was brought up.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. Bathrooms are really important. Okay, thank you so much, Judy. All right, if there is nothing else, I will entertain a motion for us to, wait. Let's make sure we have our next meeting date down before we adjourn, okay? So we're doing,
Second Tuesday.
the 2nd Tuesday would be January 9th. Everybody good with that?
I
Yep.
actually know that I cannot do that day because it's the 10th anniversary of the chemical leak. So we're doing some programming at the Culture Center in Charleston. If anybody would like to come, if you don't end up having your meeting, I'd love to see you all. But it's the kickoff right before the legislative session starts. So I can't be there, but if you all go forth and have it without me, it's okay. Or if we want to push it back a week, I could do that too.
I may be out of town that day and starting that day for about 2 or 3 weeks.
For how long?
2 or 3 weeks. He's
Going to see my family in India, so.
how
It takes that long
wonderful.
to get rid of the jet lag.
So, well, let me ask you this, Dottie. If we kept it on the 9th, could you attend on the 9th, or are you leaving on the 9th?
I don't know yet. I have other balls in the air I'm trying to juggle, so I haven't got my tickets yet. So I don't know, but it's right up in there.
Well, why don't we, I hate to lose Maria, but since we do sort of have commitment on the second Tuesday, let's go ahead and now if he wasn't going to be there, but we could catch you the next week, I was willing to do it. But since he's not sure, why don't we just leave it there? And we completely understand. And we'll miss you, Maria. And we understand that you're doing really important work and appreciate that.
Thank you. I'll be representing all of our values there too. So
I know
I'll miss you all. I'll see you again soon.
And you can start recruiting for the environmental council.
Right.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, guys, thank you all so much. Before we adjourn, I know that we are, here almost, we've been at this for, I don't know, almost a year. And I think we've done some really, really good work. Really appreciate all of you all as we go into the holidays. There's a lot to be thankful and blessed about. And I'm very, very thankful and blessed. I feel very blessed about the work that we're doing and really appreciate being with very serious people with really big hearts and really want to improve the state of West Virginia. And so I know this is the nitty-gritty work, but really, really appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you and happy holidays and happy New Year. And hopefully we'll see you on the 9th. So with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Merry
Any
Christmas, everybody, and happy holidays.